Testing, testing, can you hear me? Testing, can you hear me? Mike, testing, can you hear me? How does this sound? Testing, can you hear me? Testing, testing. Does it work? Is it gonna work for you?
Oh, there we go. Thank you. We'll start with a roll call. Vicki?
Commissioner Armstrong?
Here.
Commissioner Foley is absent. He's still touring China. Commissioner Cohen?
Here.
Commissioner Coladonato?
Present.
Commissioner De La Torre?
Present.
Commissioner Diaz?
Here.
Commissioner Goodman?
Here.
Commissioner Lamort?
Here.
Vice Chair Navarro is absent today. Commissioner Pace? Not here currently. And Chair Young?
Here. Thank you. So many different pages going here. Regarding the posting of the agenda,
The agenda for today's meeting was posted on the city's website, at City Hall, and at the Leisure Center by 5 p.m. last Thursday, November the 15th, as required by established policies and procedures.
thank you. Regarding the minutes, has everybody had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting? Are there any changes, any requests for adjustments? Do we have a motion?
A motion to pass the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain, I'm gonna abstain.
And abstention?
Yeah, and I'll abstain too as well. I
Two
wasn't here.
abstentions. You have that, Vicki?
Yep.
Great, thank you. All right, it's time for public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address Parks and Recreation Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. Although the commission values your comments, pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. We will give 3 minutes to each speaker, and if you'll come and sit just adjacent to me as you speak, please depress the button to make sure the green light is on and announce your name and where you reside. Thank you. We're ready to begin. And each speaker has 3 minutes. Come forward as you're ready. Thank you.
She's gonna give some emails on.
Good day, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Colleen Hawes. I reside at 1528 East Verbena Drive, Palm Springs. And today I wanted to talk about tennis, and in particular the history of tennis in Palm Springs, to put some sort of framework on the demand for the courts. So Palm Springs has a very long, glorious history of tennis. It was known for golf and tennis, but in fact, tennis is what put Palm Springs on the map. In 1933, there were only 2 tennis courts in Palm Springs, and there was one at El Mirador and one at the Desert Inn. There were issues related to scarcity of courts, so some avid tennis players, Charlie Farrell and Ralph Bellamy, bought a parcel of land and started their own tennis club, known as the Racket Club. It was complete with lavatory, dressing rooms, and they had a small electric plate to make hamburgers. They started the famous Racket Club that made Palm Springs what it is today. The Racket Club doubled the number of courts in Palm Springs to 4. Soon after, they added 2 more courts, a pool, cabanas, and a clubhouse. It was a place where the Hollywood elite came to get away from the city. Charlie Farrell and his wife, Virginia Valley, ran the Racket Club, and with the gravitational pull of their celebrity friends, it was very popular, where they played tennis all day and partied all night. Many celebrities are known for their antics at the Racket Club. There's Frank Bogart, Kirk Douglas, Frank Sinatra, Jane Wyman, Jack Benny, Bob Hope, and it's rumored that Marilyn Monroe was discovered there. In 1937, the Palm Springs Tennis Club was started by Pearl McManus, known as Auntie Pearl. It had 2 courts, and it soon grew to 3, and in fact, they hosted the first Davis Cup. This popular club rivaled the racket club for its good tennis and wild parties. And it soon became known that Palm Springs was a place to be if you wanted to play tennis. Later on, the Tamarisk Park in the movie colony was built and boasted many amenities, including 8 tennis courts. It was renamed for the city's first councilwoman, Ruth Hardy, following her death in 1965. The Ruth Hardy Park became synonymous with public tennis in Palm Springs, and people flocked to the famous park from all over the world. It's the to-go place for tennis in the valley.
Sorry, but your time is up.
Oh,
Thank you very
almost
much.
done. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. It's on.
It's on.
There you go.
Hi, commissioners and audience, tennis players and pickleball folks. I moved to sunny Palm Springs, Linda Bird,
Thank you,
sorry.
Linda.
Moved to sunny Palm Springs from Colorado and started playing tennis at Ruth Hardy over 48 years ago. At that time, the affordable tennis was located at, Ruth Hardy had 8 courts, Demuth had 4 courts, La Mancha had 4 courts, the Plaza Racket Club 9, 6 courts at Palm Springs High, and 3 at Downey, for a total of 34 courts. But over the years, with land sales, loss of leases, and other factors, we lost most of those courts, 24 total. The availability for tennis, affordable tennis, was now down 70%. Great loss. The city came in and tried to save the Plaza Racket Club, different things, supporters from Riding the Desert Sun, public supporters, but it was of no avail. Those people were displaced, some of them coming to Ruth Hardy to play. So with the loss of 70% of the courts, now there's a possibility of losing 2 of the courts at Ruth Hardy, a 25% loss. So we would be down to 6 to the conversion of pickleball courts at that area. It would be nice if they could convert the rest of the Demuth Park courts, giving the pickleball courts a 100% increase and having 2 indoor courts also, for a total of 18 courts there. It's not asking too much. People at the park they've put up net straps, they've put boards on fences to keep balls from going out, you cement in straps, anything we can do to help the park people that before they get there, if the need is there. So we just want to let Ruth Hardy remain the iconic tennis haven that it's been for over half a century for the locals and from friends all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
My name is Sean Sheehan. My wife and I reside at 211 West Mesquite Avenue in Palm Springs, California. I started to play tennis at Ruth Hardy about 10 years ago. I had been interested in coming down to the desert where my grandparents had a place here in Palm Springs. And I asked around where was there affordable high-level tennis in the Palm Springs area. And I was told, this is up in Seattle, Washington, that Ruth Hardy was the place to go, that on the West Coast that was one of the centers of affordable, high-quality tennis. And I've been playing there for 10 years. The courts are full. Not quite yet. The snowbirds haven't really started to arrive until after Thanksgiving. But if you're out there in a late morning, you'll find that those courts are very busy indeed. It seems to me the city has an opportunity, and of course the city and the Parks Commission has to be concerned about equity. That's just something in any limited resource, you have to be concerned about equity. But it seems to me there's an opportunity for a win-win for the city, for Demuth Park to become the center of pickleball play in the Coachella Valley, for Ruth Hardy Park to remain the center of tennis. I have met people from Croatia, from Germany, from Bulgaria, all over the world, and certainly all over Canada, both east and west, at Ruth Hardy Park. And like my wife and I won't tell you all of those people would not come to Palm Springs if there were not 8 tennis courts at Ruth Hardy Park, because I don't know that. What I can tell you is that many people come to Palm Springs for the opportunity to play affordable tennis at Ruth Hardy Park. And the win-win for the city is to have two crown jewels you can use in your tourism outreach and your tourism promotion, which is to have Ruth Hardy continue as one of the main centers of affordable public tennis on the West Coast, and to develop DeMuth Park for pickleball. And I think an outreach to raise money from both the pickleball and the racket community in general to build, if necessary, more courts at DeMuth Park would work. And I myself would contribute to building more pickleball courts at DeMuth Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Don Purvis. I'm a regular visitor to Palm Springs for the last 5 years. I've flown in from Sydney to participate in organised tennis tournaments here in Palm Springs, which are fabulous. I know other Australians come in to this beautiful city. I love it here. I've been coming for 5 years. I usually rent a condo. I'm staying at San Rafael near the tramway at the moment. So, like the other tourists that the previous speaker mentioned, we do actually spend quite a lot of money to enhance the economy in Palm Springs. If the tennis courts were taken away, I don't think I would be coming anymore. I play with two friends of mine, both residents of Palm Springs, who live in Vista Chino, quite near the courts. As I said, this is my 5th year. I come twice a year, so that's 10 occasions in the last 5 years that I've been here. So I don't know what the dollar figure is. I know my bank balance goes down a lot, especially with the Australian dollar weak against the American behemoth. But what I do know is that I think this is a fantastic facility. I think it would be... I've never heard of pickleball, before I came here. I'm not saying it's not a good sport, but tennis is an established sport for Australians as it is for Americans. One of the reasons that the US is so good at tennis is because of public facilities like Ruth Hardy. If that was taken away, Australia would probably go past you in the rankings. So don't let it happen, even though I'm Australian. I think it's a fantastic public facility. Please don't let it go away. You will lose tourists, economic paying tourists like myself, and the locals who obviously have been playing there for many, many, many years. It's a historical venue. I think I agree with the previous speaker, you can have win-win. I think DeMuth would be a great venue for pickleball, but please don't take Ruth Hardy away from me and my friends. I'm not going to cry, but it would be very upsetting to come here and find that that has disappeared. Fabulous venue, love it. And that's the reason I prep here for my tournaments at Ruth Hardy, maybe 4 times a week, and I've met a lot of people, some of these present today. So all I can say is repeat the refrain. Please keep Ruth Hardy as a tennis venue. Thank you. And I'll keep coming back to Palm Springs. Love it here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Garrick. I live in Indian Canyon neighborhood, Palm Springs. I'm not sure exactly what the format of this is, but I'm a pickleball player, and I just started earlier this year. The history is interesting about tennis, but I think the only thing applicable is capacity and demand. And what I've seen is it's probably about, I was playing all summer. I'm a year-round resident. And it was, on the weekends I played at Ruth Hardy. We'd set up 8 courts, and there was always people waiting to turn those courts around. And the tennis courts, there were some tennis players over there, but they were not full. And the same thing goes with DeMuth, where I also play during the week. And usually there's no tennis players that I see over at DeMuth. But there's, at this time of year, there's probably about 30, 40 people waiting to play on the pickleball courts there. So the demand is, I don't know what the ratio is, 10 to 1 or something, but it seems to me that's the only applicable metric that should be considered. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Thank you.
John Miller. I have a condo at 1950 South Palm Canyon in Palm Springs. And it was nice to hear from, first of all, thank you for having this meeting. It's really important for us, as you can see with the attendance. Thanks to the pickleball people who came here too, because one thing I think we should really make clear is we support pickleball. It looks like a really fun sport. I haven't played it. I have friends that play it, and they do need a facility to play pickleball, and we want to support them to find that facility. I don't think Ruth Hardy Park tennis courts are the place to do it. You mentioned in the summer, there isn't much demand, and I think people could play pickleball because when it's that hot out and the tourists aren't here, I think there were courts available at Ruth Hardy. But yesterday I waited for an hour to play, and it's only November. In March, it'll probably be a 2-hour wait. I think the previous speakers mentioned how we've lost so many tennis courts in Palm Springs. We really can't afford to lose any more. And pickleball isn't really compatible being played at the facility at Ruth Hardy Park. The lines are in different places, the net's a different height. So when pickleball has to go in, they have to put tape down. And it's an inconvenience for them, it's an inconvenience for the tennis players. You have to pull up the tape, residue gets left behind. Sometimes the tape gets left behind. I think someone tripped over it. It's a little bit of a hazard, and there are people of all ages and abilities playing down there, so that has to be a concern for the city. And I know some people do mention that, it's a public space, so why shouldn't we be able to play pickleball there? But most of public space is designated for certain activities. There's also a parking lot right next door. It's got lines and you park there. It's designated for parking. You can't play pickleball there, you can't play tennis there. Ruth Hardy, the tennis courts there are for tennis, and we really have to help the pickleball people get a place that they can play the sport. It's a fast-growing sport, and again, it looks like a lot of fun. And one thing I also wanted to mention was Ruth Hardy are tennis courts, but it's a tennis community. It's one of the few places in the world you can go there on your own, pick up a game, meet people, and that's why I bought property in Palm Springs. And that's something really important to remember. It's in most places, you go play tennis, you organize it, you arrange it with a friend, you go to a tennis court and you play tennis. At Ruth Hardy, you go become part of a community. You usually go on your own. And it's just so important. So I think we have to help the pickleball people find a place to play, and we have to make sure that we retain the courts at Ruth Hardy and actually expand them, because we need more courts there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name's Julie Knowles, and my husband and I live 9 months of the year in England and 3 months of the year at the Racquet Club, Sunrise Racquet Club. So we as a tennis group are trying to present to you today what Ruth Hardy Park and tennis means to everyone. We've been fortunate to travel the world playing tennis in numerous countries, including the Wimbledon Vets tournaments, and I can assure you that we have not found a facility as unique as this park. We first visited Palm Springs in 1987 because of the Hollywood connection. But after being introduced to the Ruth Hardy Park and tennis family, who made us so welcome, our annual pilgrimage began, and we've not missed our annual visit for 30 years. We live here 3 months of the year. We rent a house, we rent a car, we eat in restaurants, like many hundreds of other tennis visitors. I could name players from at least 20 countries, as has already been mentioned, without mentioning the visitors from other US states. We used to come in March as well, but with only 8 remaining public tennis courts left after the loss of so many like the Plaza, it's almost impossible to get a set on a daily basis. Yes, we do want to play every day if we're spending $20,000 for each visit, so we now only come in September and we stay until Christmas. Ruth Hardy is a really unique place because of the standard and the quality of play, from beginners to outstanding tournament players. All are made to feel welcome on court, including a lone player without a partner. Because of the park rules, that player would slot in with a stranger and get a game. If courts 7 and 8 are lost to pickleball, the wait times will be impossible, even in the fall. Can't imagine what the problems will be like in January, February and March. We saw a pickleball petition online last week, so I decided to test the waters, and I took a clipboard and a pen to Ruth Hardy and spoke to actual Ruth Hardy tennis players from last Sunday the 11th to Sunday the 18th of November, and the signatures that I'd like to present to the group. There's 220 names of local people, not just online signatures that could come from anywhere in the world. So in summary, Ruth Hardy is unique and historical, and we simply want to keep our courts for tennis and happily support pickleball players to have their own centre at Demuth. Thank you very much.
I am Pete Henson and play pickleball daily at Demuth Park since the first court was converted. When there is waiting, the picklers rarely fail to point out, Court 3 is vacant and should be converted to pickleball. I have heard this so many times it's become a refrain in my brain. I've never once heard anyone say that the wait is too long at Demuth, so we need to go to Ruth Hardy and convert a busy court. Still, you folks have an online petition that advocates conversion at Ruth Hardy. The explanation for this is that those folks are a minority of the pickleball community. I understand that at an ad hoc meeting with the tennis players, advice was given that numbers matter. So the tennis players went out and got a petition that folks on site actually signed. But what is more important is that the players at Demuth are representative of the overwhelming number of the Palm Springs pickleball community. The online petition says waits can be 20 to 45 minutes at Demuth, which would be a huge number of players. So if numbers count, I seek that those of you who have no conflict of interest simply go to Demuth and ask the pickleballers this. Do you favor conversion of Court 3 at Demuth to 4 pickleball courts? Do you favor tennis only at Ruth Hardy and pickleball at Demuth? It will be yes to both. You don't know me. Go ask them, and that's what they will tell you. Now, when courts 1, 2, and 3 were proposed for conversion, the tennis players did not make a big fuss. And what is so irksome to me is that I believe that this meeting could and should be about converting Court 3, and there would not be any tennis players in the auditorium here. Instead, as you can see, the tennis players are here now and not going away soon. It didn't have to be this way. So the solution is obvious. All the tennis players and the vast majority of the pickleballers want the same thing. Tennis only, enforceably posted at Ruth Hardy, and pickleball at Demuth, each to their own venue. I'll repeat that. They all want the same thing. As the devil is in the details, signs are of no use unless they have included a civil code ordinance. We know that. You can ask Rachel at Palm Springs PD. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you for hosting the meeting. My name is Peter McPherson. I live at Canyon Sands. I'm a tennis player. Just a couple of comments on remarks that have been made earlier. One about the financial aspect. I just read recently that 2017, the BNP Paribas contributed over $400 million to the value, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. Also, along with what somebody else said, it was interesting. Last Saturday, I was playing tennis. It was 10:30 in the morning. I looked over. There was nobody playing pickleball, but there was at least 28 people that I counted on the tennis courts, you know, waiting and playing. So it's just interesting. I support what Pete Henson just said, and John Miller before him. We're all in favor, the tennis players are all in favor of dividing Demuth and Ruth Hardy. For me as a tennis player, it's a matter of critical mass. I want to be where a lot of tennis, I don't want 2 courts here, 2 courts there, another court over there. You like to go, it's like a magnet, a moth to a light. We're all drawn to Ruth Hardy. And I imagine that the pickleball players feel the same way. The problem that we're faced with, that you've addressed or presented with us today, is do we take courts from Ruth Hardy? It would be appalling to me that a city of 50,000 people has 6 public tennis courts. I mean, that's a joke. We've got 4 alternative solutions that I see. Do nothing, but that obviously is good from the cost side, but it's not practical, and certainly not in the long term. 2, build more pickleball courts. Where? I know Ellen has suggested Sunrise Park, and that's probably a good solution. If I was a pickleball player, I'd want them to build them at Demuth Park, so keep us all together. I think that's a good long-term solution. Dealing with short-term solutions, there's another one that people seem to have not discussed, and that's using public facilities other than the parks. I'm thinking of the schools. And I read this quote from the Palm Springs Master Plan 2014. I quote, "Implement a joint use agreement between Parks and Recreation Department and Palm Springs Unified School District for shared facility use. Maximize use of public facilities." Now, I understand that the school board has made a couple of what I think specious arguments against that. One is the insurance cost. People who fall, they're going to fall any place, you know, if they're going to do that. Secondly, somebody's actually said that the school board has thought that gun controls are going to be a problem and we can't have open the school facilities for pickleball on the weekend. It's ridiculous. You've got 8 basketball courts over at Palm Springs High. You've got 8 tennis courts. You've got a lot of space there. And even if you just used it on the weekend, it's not going to interfere with the schools. But it would certainly take a lot of pressure off pickleball. As far as tennis players are concerned, we just want you to maintain Ruth Hardy Park.
Sorry, your time is up.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ron Schmeck. I play pickleball every day. I teach approximately over 50 people to play every week. I just came back from giving lessons, and I do it in La Quinta, Palm Springs, and Palm Desert. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in this world. It's jumping at us so fast. We got to do something now. We can't just keep talking. Every year we come here and we talk. We need more pickleball courts. Now, I don't blame the tennis players for wanting to give up Harding Park. That's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. I'd love to be able to play pickleball there too. But I don't want to really take away the courts that they have, personally. We need those courts over at Demuth Park. I've got some pictures here that I took November 12th, 9 o'clock in the morning. There was over 50 people waiting to play pickleball in the morning at 9 o'clock. And there was 2 empty tennis courts, not a soul. Now, if someone did come over there, we could say, just drive over Harding Park. It isn't that far. I drive all over this whole desert every day to play pickleball. And I think you guys should really do something for us right away, because I don't have as much time as a lot of you, okay? We just had the Nationals. There was over 100,000 people come for pickleball. We had 2,200 people in the tournament. I did win a silver anyway, I want to tell you that.
Congratulations, Ryan.
I'm 87, and all the guys I play don't run too fast. Anyway, please do something for us, guys. Let's make everybody happy. They don't want us to come over at Harding Park right now. What you should do is build us all, take some of that land over there and build us some brand new pickleball courts. Or just right now with a little bit of money, fix Demuth Park so we can have 2 more tennis courts there we could be playing on. I've got pictures to prove it, and you guys would know it yourself if you just come over there in any morning and come over there. God bless you guys. You're doing a good job.
Thanks, Ron.
Next speaker, I'd like to ask if you're coming through loud and clear, if you could push the mic a little bit away. This is being televised, so it's going to be hard on our system. So just slide it away if it's getting too loud. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Corey Dickinson. My wife and I own a condo in Palm Springs, and we live in Seattle. We come down here specifically to play tennis. I like pickleball. I think it's a tremendous sport. I'm told it's the only sport that grandchildren and grandparents can play together, and I think that's wonderful. But we've never found a place anywhere like Ruth Hardy Park where we could just show up and make friends and play tennis and get games anytime we want. There's players there that have committed 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of their life playing this sport, and this is the facility. It's the most active tennis facility, public facility in all of California. Friday night, I played tennis with a gentleman I met a week ago. After we were done playing, he said, "Corey, do you realize I've been playing tennis 10 years longer than you've been alive?" You know, these are the people, and we had some great play. And these are the people that I meet. My wife and I love. Our favorite thing to do is bring another couple down from Seattle, have them stay with us, bring them to the park, show them the park, make friends, play pickleball or play tennis, have a great time, go out to dinner. And some of these people have never been to Palm Springs before, and they get hooked, and they come back over and over and over again. They spend money. They enjoy themselves here. They rent hotel rooms. They support the local businesses. And I would just really hate to lose those courts at Ruth Hardy Park. You'll see my wife and my name on that petition. If there was a proposition or a request to raise money for more pickleball courts, my wife and I would contribute to that cause just to help save our courts at Ruth Hardy. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Has everybody spoken who would like to? Okay, thank you, Paul.
Good afternoon, Commission. I'm not here to talk about tennis or pickleball, believe it or not. Paul Hendrickson, Palm Springs, and I've spoken with you in the past regarding the proposed citywide no smoking ordinance, and I wanted to just touch base with you and talk about why it's important as we pursue trying to get a resolution of support from Parks and Rec. One of the hot spots in our city with a problem with smoking, we already have a ban of smoking on, and that's in the parks, but it's widely ignored. And one of the reasons we have such a problem is because we have bad tools. And those tools are signage. There's examples of good signs and bad signs, and I'll share some of those in a minute with you. And as the saying goes, it takes a village. It does, because we can't expect the enforcement we shouldn't expect the police to be everywhere all the time. And we as citizens, we can do something about it. But we need to have tools that don't cause a confrontational situation, that have the potential for a positive outcome. And some cities have addressed that issue with good signage. And in our parks, I've got a few of these. I'll pass them around. It has 2 pictures on here. One, the brown one on the left, is of the Palm Springs signs that are in the parks that are widely ignored and often not even noticed. And next to it, and to scale, is an example of a good sign, which is a good tool for communicating and helping. And that's from San Diego. And it works really successfully because it has a few other components to the sign, as well as they're much more visible, the way they're produced and the size of them, that they're a positive tool for positive engagement rather than confrontational. So let me send a few of these around. You can take a look at the difference of them. Here, Travis, I'll send a few that way. And if you can just take a look at them. So that's one of the reasons support from Parks and Rec is really important, because that's a tool that we really need to address in our city. And so at some point in the near future, hopefully you'll put us on the agenda and we can talk more about it. But it's basically getting a resolution of support on the concept, and especially focusing on providing better tools in our parks so that we can, as a community, as a village, address it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Other speakers, please step forward.
There you go. Thank you. James DeGain, 396 Amino Circle, Palm Springs. My family's been here since '73. I grew up in Orange County, and we moved here in '73. My father used to play tennis over at Ruth Hardy and used to tell me about it. I wasn't a tennis player back then. I started playing tennis about 10, 12 years ago, and I love it over there. I met a lot of people over there. The Don, Joe Corona, who I'm sure has been here before you guys have met, and there's a whole host of characters over there. It has a long history of tennis. However, I'm a big sports person, and I like all different sports, and in fact, have intentions of learning the game of pickleball and playing it. I haven't yet, but I'm going to. However, I do play at Ruth Hardy quite a bit, and I don't really think having the two sports in close proximity is beneficial. They're two different sports. The noise level's different. The rhythm of the game's different. I would be totally in favor if there was an initiative to build pickleball courts with a buffer at Ruth Hardy farther away from the courts, although we do need more courts at Ruth Hardy just for tennis at this point. In the summertime, none of the courts are that busy. I've been by Demuth in the summer, and in the morning there's a lot of pickleball, but in the afternoon everything tapers off, both at Ruth Hardy and at Demuth Park. However, now we're coming into our busy season. I'm sure there's tons and tons of pickleball players at both places right now, and there was a wait this weekend for tennis at Ruth Hardy, and there was people standing waiting for courts this morning at Ruth Hardy. Not a lot, but there were some. All the courts were busy. Every court was being utilized. So I would be in favor of supporting developing the Demuth Park for pickleball. I think it needs to be expanded, obviously, if they're having long waits, and any other kind of development you could do to spur on help the pickleball community, I think would be very good. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We're slowing down with speakers. Is there anybody else? Please, we need to get through. We actually have an agenda to go, so we really do want to hear from you. We're glad you're here, but feel free to come forward a little bit more quickly. So, thank you.
Hi, Rich Kodrowski, live on 1528 East Verbena in the movie colony. The reason my wife and I bought the house there was to play tennis at Ruth Hardy. We ride our bicycles there every day. We volunteer at all the tournaments. I'm a 20-year international tennis official. Tennis is my life. I hate to say this, but if it gets any more crowded at Ruth Hardy, because we lose courts, we will probably move elsewhere, because this is why we came here. I know that the last court is often not used. There was a sign on Court 8 which said, "Court use for children." It is very important that people who show up with their 6-year-olds and their 8-year-olds have a place to play. And so us tennis players do not use that court unless we have to. So yes, the pickleballers can come in and say, oh, Court 8 is always open, nobody's using it. That's because we leave that court for the last for the kids. But when it gets really crowded, February, March, April, then we use all the courts, and the families just have to go elsewhere. So I don't want you to be under the impression that there are open courts at Ruth Hardy, because during the time that I'm here, November to May, I wait virtually every single day for half an hour to 45 minutes. In February, March, April, that wait will be an hour and a half. So what we need is more tennis courts. We don't need to lose tennis courts to pickleball. When I want to play pickleball, which I do, I go to a pickleball court. I don't go to a tennis court. When I ride my bicycle, I go and ride it in a bike lane. I don't go on the golf course. I don't go on the baseball field. So there are places for sports. And as far as I know, the signs at Ruth Hardy say courts are for tennis and tennis-related activities. Pickleball is not a tennis-related activity. It is a different sport. They should have a place to play. I would certainly support any way that they can have more courts so they have a place to play. But having them play at Ruth Hardy, that is a huge no-no. And they're using the court that's supposed to be designated for kids and families, and that's really not appropriate. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no speakers coming
I
forward.
have one.
Oh.
I was going to do it under.
We have one more.
I'll give my 2 cents. Oh, okay. I have a thing, yeah.
My name is Jane Dodd, and I live in Palm Springs. And I do play pickleball. Took up just last January, love it. I play indoors, I play outdoors, I play at Ruth Hardy, I play at Demuth. One thing I think that hasn't been brought up is why aren't the 2 tennis courts that, if tennis is in such demand, why aren't the 2 tennis courts being used at Demuth? And I think the elephant in the room is the air quality. And there's a lot of people that play indoors that don't want to play outdoors at Demuth because they have allergies, they have problems with that. The air quality with the wastewater treatment plant can be horrible. And that's why some people won't play outdoors, they play indoors. There's wait times indoors, there's wait times outdoors. There's wait times at Ruth Hardy when we're playing pickleball, there's wait times no matter what. You have a lot of people wanting to play pickleball. And it's really easy to say, well, just play at Demuth. Well, why aren't the tennis players playing at Demuth? Because there's air quality issues.
All right, this is not a time for that negotiation.
Let's just say it's a less desirable area. How about that?
Thank you.
But the simple fact is we need more courts. I mean, we need more tennis courts, we need more pickleball courts. That's a very simple, easy thing to do. And yes, tennis was a big part of Palm Springs, so is golf. We lose $2 million a year, or whatever the number is, providing a public golf course. I think we can come up with some money to provide more pickleball courts. It's not yes, there's an investment, but it's not that expensive, and it's not that expensive to maintain. You do more pickleball courts, more tennis courts. It's just simply something that older people can play, younger people can play. Pickleball's a much easier sport to play, and people can play it longer into their golden years. So that's our community. I think we just need to get on board. It's a popular sport, and it's not going away anytime soon. And a good chunk of the people that I play with are from Washington State. There's snowbirds, there's locals, but it's a very popular sport in Canada. It's a very popular sport in Washington and Oregon. And that's who our tourists are. So we need to keep them coming here, right? And we're all cheap, and we all like to do something that's free. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day, Council. My name is Mike Kinsey, everyone. I've lived in Palm Springs for 36 years. Frank Bogart was a personal friend of mine and my next-door neighbor. I used to live right next to the original Frank Sinatra estate here. I've been playing there for 36 years. The reason I'm up to speak is a lot of us, none of us really wanted to be here to begin with. And we felt that we were put in a position that we had to speak. One of the things I think that's really bad is all of us are athletes. We all appreciate sport. we support pickleball, but we shouldn't be having to do this. We need a decision. We need a council, that we pick and vote for, represent us to make a decision. Now, as far as the last statement went, the numbers, I think, there was a 78% reduction in the smell of the plant over there. And maybe that may have been an issue in the past. As I said, I've coached for 16 years AYSO soccer over at that park. I coached 16 years for Little League Baseball at that park. Longtime residents. I believe your city has spent, what, $22 million to resolve that issue over there? So I think it's, we have to take everything into account. And we all support pickleball, but it is not cohesive for where we're at. And I think one of the reasons it's led us to this table today, again, I was in Europe for the last couple meetings, and we just need a decision. I think the pickleballers need their own location. We want to support them. And that's really it. We don't want to argue with anybody. And we certainly need a decision because, come season, there's going to be an issue. See, we all know that we give the court up. It's an unwritten rule. It's the only challenge courts in the valley. You come, you see your level, you sit down, people greet you, 4 on, 4 off. Pickleball isn't like that. And they do take the family court down there. We don't use the family court because it says, the sign's been there for 40 years at least on the gate. It says, family use. So no, we don't use it. Now, as to the case about using that court in the summer, the courts aren't full in the summer. But there's a whole crew that uses those shady courts. The Filipino contingent that's been here for 40 years that play tennis in our community and has put out some great champions, they play there every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shonda Thomas Favreau, and thank you so much, all of you, for trying to find a solution for creating more pickleball courts here in the Valley. I know that change is not easy, and Palm Springs is on the precipice of change. Palm Springs has the opportunity to make history and to stop the segregation of both of these sports. Pickleball and tennis have a lot in common, and it's time for the unification of both sports, and there's room for both sports to coexist in all of the parks in Palm Springs. Pickleball is a fast-growing sport. It's the fastest-growing sport in America, and it needs to have more areas in Palm Springs to play. I'm very saddened by what I've heard and I've witnessed, even playing at Ruth Hardy Park, how the tennis players treat the pickleball players. There's no room for that kind of unkindness anymore in the world. I know that a lot of people are getting exposed to that, and I beg upon you, each and every one of you, to find it in your hearts and your minds to make Palm Springs a place of unification. This tennis should be here, and pickleball should be there, and this should be this, and this should be that, is ridiculous now. There's time for unity. There's time for all of us to come together. And this is a sport that it's just the play. Everybody wants a place to play. So I think it's very, very important that the tennis players and the pickleball players are able to coexist in all of the parks. I know for many years, Ruth Hardy has only been one thing. There's time for change, and allow other people and other nationalities come from all over the world, and they'll be able to play pickleball and tennis. It'd be really nice that some of the tennis players can go to play tennis, and then when they're done, they can go over to the next court and play pickleball. Both sports, pickleball has originated from tennis, and there's just time now that if we could find it in your hearts, because I was there a couple weeks ago and tennis players came over just to be mean to the pickleball players. I know that they think that that's their place, but there's a place for all of us. And it's time that we have a place for the pickleball players to play alongside of the tennis players, and we can create unity and create history here in Palm Springs by finding a solution to this problem. Thank you for your time and your patience.
Thank you, Shonda. With no further speakers, Vicki, you have a letter asked to be read into the record?
I do. This came in from Frank Alvarez. He lives at 1105 Asher Drive in Palm Springs, dated November 19, 2018, and it is addressed to the commissioners. Dear Commissioners, I'm a full-time resident of Palm Springs and live across the street from Ruth Hardy Park. I've attended several Parks and Recreation Commission meetings and have addressed pickleball as well as other concerns. I feel the city of Palm Springs has neglected the Parks and Recreation facilities far too long, and this is becoming more and more evident as the increasing demand for pickleball courts has become an issue both at the parks as well in public meetings and even in the media. Since May, due to the lack of pickleball facilities, a small, then larger group has been utilizing the unused tennis courts at Ruth Hardy Park for pickleball on Saturday and Sunday mornings. The tennis players have been mostly cooperative in this, considering we have been using the two courts which are in the most disrepair and are barely used for tennis. While I support the proposal for converting one tennis court at Demuth and the eventual construction of more pickleball courts and possibly tennis courts at Sunrise Park, I strongly urge the Commission to recommend that Ruth Hardy Park receive attention as well. Several tennis courts and lightings are neglected, obsolete, or even not functional. The bathroom facilities are disgusting, which is a shame since the building appears to be a mid-century modern architectural diamond in the rough. Since tennis will still be available at Demuth and there are no outdoor pickleball courts anywhere else in the city, and tennis players do not actively use the courts closest to the bathrooms, I would like to see the court closest to the bathroom converted to pickleball or a new set of 4 courts constructed and the adjoining court restored and repaired. There is currently a bulge on the second court, which is a trip hazard and could produce injuries. There's no reason for animosity between pickle and tennis players other than the fact that the city is not providing the needed facilities and upgrades that the citizens have been requesting. We are the highest tax city in California, and our parks facilities don't come close to what neighboring cities like Rancho Mirage and La Quinta have. It's time to stop talking about it and deliver. Regards, Frank Alvarez.
Thank you. That will close the public comment. Our first group to speak has actually been gracious enough to allow us to move them to the second so that we can have a report on or a discussion on pickleball and tennis courts from the subcommittee. So I appreciate that change, and I'd now like to turn it over to the subcommittee for your discussion and recommendation. Thank you.
I'm actually going to, I'll just start off, but I'm going to actually ask for my colleagues to share their thoughts as well. So first, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Like, really tremendous. It was really important to have both pickleball and tennis people in the same room at the same time. We have had 2 separate meetings, one for the pickleball community, and then we had a meeting for the tennis community. And one of my talking points is really around season. So there were a number of tennis community folks who were not here who sent in emails. So with the number of people that attended and the 16 emails that came in, I felt like we had good representation. And I think we have good representation today. It also sounds like we're all moving in the same direction from today's comments and from the conversations that we've had as a subcommittee, that we're moving in the same direction. A couple of things I do want to say, and that is in the time that I've been a Parks and Recs commissioner, and when I first moved to Palm Springs, pickleball didn't exist in our valley, or at least in the west end of the valley. It wasn't being played. And my first year as a Parks and Recs commissioner, pickleball really didn't come up as a conversation. It was in my second year that the commission made recommendations to the city to start to convert courts. So I really want to remind everyone that the city has responded to the need and will continue to do so. Also, in our subcommittee, I think there was a misinterpretation from I think maybe the July or it was the September meeting where we really thought that a motion was passed to take a recommendation to the city. And we found out through the recordings that a motion was not passed. So it wasn't negligence from anyone on our commission of moving this issue and agenda forward. It seemed like there was somewhere a miscommunication. And so we would like to get this resolved as quickly as possible. And then another thing in our discussions is, like the gentleman had said, some people just don't have a lot of time to wait. And some recommendations are longer-term recommendations. They're immediate recommendations, but it might be a longer-term solution simply due to building construction and code, which can take a public institution a very long time. So we've been looking at short-term recommendations and what might be considered long-term recommendations. Before I dive deeper into what those are there anything you'd like, did I leave anything out or you want to share?
No, you're doing good.
Well, and I want to also say that in our meetings, people were civil and there was a lot of solutions being tossed around. And again, the meetings were actually pretty joyful. After the meeting, our last meeting at the tennis, with the tennis community, Commissioner Johnny and David and we took a tour of Sunrise Park just to really get an idea of what the land looked like. I mean, I think ideally what the last email said around really dedicating time and resources just to maintain and update and upgrade some of our facilities at our parks are really critical. Like, it doesn't matter where tennis lives or where pickleball lives. We need better bathrooms. We need trash removals, the reciprocals. Is that the right word? We need lighting. We need wind protection. The perimeters on the outside of the courts need to be maintained, and debris needs to be removed on a regular basis. And so all of those things are pretty consistent. So here we go. Here are some of the things that we discussed in our subcommittee. So we discussed converting the Demuth Park courts into pickleball courts, all of the courts. There are 4 tennis courts there, but all 4 courts would be converted to pickleball, with the Far East court being a conversion court. So if a family from the neighborhood came to play tennis, that the Far East court could be converted back to tennis. So that would be 3 of the tennis courts would receive permanent striping and the permanent nets, so that there would be an increase of courts. The 4th court would be that conversion. And we would hope, there's no way to really enforce it, but we would hope that if a family comes that lives in the community in Demuth Park, that the pickleball community would heed the opportunity of the family to play. So that's one of the things that we had talked about. Before we make a motion, I'll just share all the ideas. Does that work?
Yes, perfect.
We good? I don't think that it would be and I could probably speak for my subcommittee colleagues, that the city has had conversations about spending money on staff to monitor the courts. And there was a number that was tossed around at about $100,000 to staff the parks so that there would be somebody to monitor it. And we think that is actually a very bad use of money. And we would like to see the city apply that money that was in those discussions and match that money and build 16 pickleball courts, a brand new facility at Sunrise Park. Yes. The place at Sunrise Park would be between the library and the Boys and Girls Club. We believe that by making that a public court area and a pickleball center, we could possibly move some of the residents out of Sunrise Park, create more foot traffic, more community use.
And
please.
Kids from the Boys and Girls Club could use that as well. It'd be a good learning spot for them to start a new wave of youth playing pickleball as well.
Right, so it just felt like a win-win. It takes a long time for a municipality to build something, so that, in our minds, that would be a longer-term solution, but not to put off. We would like to see that be put into action fairly quickly. The suggestion came from the tennis community to speak to the school district about the high school courts. And we did speak to the school district. And the school district really values their relationship with the city and has many city partnerships. The school district and the city have many, many partnerships, and they will continue. So they're very open to exploring the high school tennis courts as an option to house pickleball until the long-term solution can actually be built. Again, the school district is a municipality, and so they are willing to entertain it, and they will have to do some research. So they have to speak with the principal, they have to go to the community. They do see it as a win-win because pickleball is favorable with young people. It's a much easier game to play for young people as they learn the balance of the courts, the footwork, the racket. So the school district is willing to look at that because there are a lot of people at the pickleball courts. And we know that it's a growing sport. We believe 16 courts will be a good number of courts, especially for tournaments, but we might at times need an overflow solution, the way Vicky, of course, has to go to other cities for softball tournaments. If in the conversation, yes.
I was going to ask a question. I thought I understood because the school uses the courts for competitive practice, that there might be an issue with restriping from that perspective. Is that something that they're willing to change on, or?
Yeah, that's a really great question. That didn't seem to be an inhibitor as much as the fact that all of the schools are considered closed campuses now. And so the one thing that would have to happen at the high school is that regardless of whether it's on a weekend or a weekday, there would have to be a new entrance, and the entrance into the school property would need to be sealed so that it just maintained the way the high school auditorium, where you can come in as the public and never get into the campus. But the school district's willing to look at all of those things.
Thank you.
With in our discussions, and I'm not going to necessarily say it's going to be a unanimous vote or decision, but in those discussions, by increasing the number of pickleball courts, it would ideally work out where Ruth Hardy Park would be an exclusive park for tennis, DeMuth Park would be an exclusive park for pickleball, and that we'd like to build an exclusive center for pickleball at Sunrise Park so that DeMuth Park can actually convert back to a community park to service the neighbors in their community. And if they choose that they would like 2 pickleball and 2 tennis, that would be great. Because the folks in DeMuth Park don't have the same access that folks in other neighborhoods have. They don't always have the same transportation. They aren't as always motivated to cross town and go somewhere else. And I'm curious to know really how many people who live in DeMuth Park are here today. Does anyone live in DeMuth Park? We have 2 people. And so oftentimes in communities like DeMuth Park, they don't often have an opportunity to express their voices and their opinions and come out and really advocate for things that they want. And so I feel personally that it's my job to advocate for everybody. So ultimately, I'd like to see DeMuth Park, after Sunrise is built, DeMuth Park go back to a dual opportunity for the neighborhood.
As we move forward, I would like to hear from every subcommittee member about this, but I want the goal to be today, at the end of this discussion, for us to have something in the form of a motion that we test to make sure it is a motion that we will put forward so that the council has clear direction on our beliefs. And I thought we had done this before, but I just want to make sure that we state it, short-term, long-term, and test it to make sure that the motion is there and that we are all voting on it and then are able to move it forward. Because I think council is waiting for us to get them a clear direction so that they can then do their work. So with that being said, David, do you have things that you'd like to add?
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank everybody as well for showing up. And I think that it's, we're in a bad position, which is the city does not have enough resources for everybody. And what we're all left with is trying to figure out how to use the best resources, what we have, properly. And it's done this crazy thing of making really good, passionate, and competitive people as if they're against each other, and that certainly really is not the case. And in all the meetings, people have been really forthcoming and caring and want to find a solution to this. I don't think we're going to find a perfect solution because I just don't think we have enough money and time which can solve everything at the moment to do it quickly. I think Commissioner Goodman has come up with an excellent suggestion about building more courts at Sunrise Park. It takes care of a number of issues. And because that's a longer-term suggestion, we need to figure out what to do in the interim. And I very much like the idea of being able to upgrade the facilities in both Demuth and Ruth Hardy so that they're reasonable. So there's good lighting, which there is not now at both parks, so that there's reasonable wind screens, there's shade, that everybody can enjoy their sport as best as possible. I like the idea of creating more pickleball courts in Demuth Park so that there is less reason for people to want to go other places. And I am very much, I hear what is being said, that there's a strong sense of community for generations about tennis at Ruth Hardy Park. And I believe that's also what's going on in the pickleball community. You're hearing a strong sense of welcoming and people liking to be with each other. It's a social sport as well. So we're trying to find a way for everybody to be able to have their community and be supported. I think there have been, and I'm just going to chalk it up to people being passionate and competitive, there have been some people who have not acted kindly, especially in the beginning when they felt threatened. I understand that. I don't think that is what either community is about, and I'm willing to give a pass on both sides at the moment for people just not acting, a few people not acting great. I think this is a good suggestion, and I think that it's something that I definitely can support. For the most part, the way that Commissioner Goodman has outlined it. The only thing I want to be careful of, though, is doing something that has unintended consequences. And I think that we shouldn't be creating a law or a rule that says you can't play a particular sport in a particular park. Because if you do that in one park, it sets a precedent, and then we have to start doing it in other parks. People can come up and say, well, you can't play tennis in Demuth Park then, or people can come up with whatever they want to suggest. I think the best thing to do is to have people be respectful of each other and try to understand where they're coming from. And just because even if we created a law, it's not going to make it that people are going to follow it. So I think we have to be careful about what we do and send the right signals to everybody. What I heard today, though, was the tennis community being incredibly supportive of the pickleball community and vice versa. I think that's really heartening. That's really the way we should go.
I'd like to remind everybody that we don't make the laws. We can make recommendations to our city council. So we will try to keep all of that in mind. Commissioner Coloradano.
Sure. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Sorry this has gone as long as it has. David pretty much hit it right on the head, is the way I feel as well. Both meetings that we had were very successful, and bringing everybody together and getting their ideas and putting this together turned out to be pretty good. So with this moving forward, this has to get put on, and the city council, I want to recommend as well that we put this forward and let the city council do what they need to do. Ruth Hardy Park's been great. Tennis, the pickleball community doing something over at Demuth Park is a fantastic idea, and it's something that needs to be done. That's pretty much what I got right now.
Commissioner Diaz.
So I call for a motion to be put on the floor. Ms.
You want me to read it? Motion and then comments.
If we make a motion, then we can discuss it.
Right. We have to put the motion on first before we talk about the motion.
Second.
So Commissioner Goodman, would you like to put that motion forward with the suggestions that you made?
I just want to make sure that we're clear and that we're in order. So I know that there's other commissioners that want to share ideas and thoughts. are we able to share ideas and thoughts first? Or
No,
do you want to put a motion
What
first?
I want to do is
and
I want to put a motion forward and have it seconded and open for discussion.
Okay. So I actually have a couple of motions. I would like to present the motions in compartments, if that makes sense, instead of all together as one. Or would you like me to put it all together as one?
I'd like it to be conjunctive if it could. so
Altogether.
It's single, yeah.
Yes, all together?
Yes.
Okay, so here we'll go. So we'll put a motion forward. I'd like to put a motion forward that the City of Palm Springs build 16 pickleball courts at Sunrise Park, and that area would be ideally in between the library and the Boys and Girls Club. Continuing, convert the 2 remaining tennis courts at Demuth Park into pickleball courts. One of the courts would be permanently striped. The far east court would have the temporary stripes and the temporary net, so that should tennis community want to play there, the neighbors, that could be moved. Third, that both facilities, both parks, get the safety needed around the perimeter of their courts. They get workable lights, the wind guards that are necessary, make sure that the bleachers are up to par for the facility, make sure that the restrooms are updated and maintained, and that Ruth Hardy Park, with all of the other recommendations, would be dedicated to tennis.
Second the motion.
Let's open for discussion. Commissioner Armstrong?
Well, I just want to say I prefer that, I'm not sure that's our policy, always have a motion and not hear from other commissioners, but because what we could say could inform the motion, it could still be amended. But first, I do want to thank the pickleball community and the tennis community for coming out here. It's remarkable to hear the tennis players talk about the history and the racket club and how rooted his tennis is in our community. I'm not a tennis player, but I really appreciate that and the idea that Ruth Hardy is a special place and it's a social space as well was really meaningful to me. I think a year ago we had invited the tennis community to come here and we had a good turnout. And then I think what happened since then is the pickleball community is very organized and we heard them a lot and we didn't hear the voices from the tennis community. And so it sort of took on its own life. Over this time, we've heard that both communities have been accused of harassing the other community. It would be great if we could all play together, but if we've heard testimony from both sides, that's a problem. But my concern with this motion is that when we last time invited the tennis community here, we hear some very compelling testimony about Demuth Park. And there was one Latino man who said that he learned tennis at Demuth Park, and now he teaches children at Demuth Park. We heard testimony today how important public courts are for continuing sports and getting people, active and exercising. So I just don't see removing the tennis option at Demuth for this neighborhood as the right course. I'm very doubtful, given what I've heard about the harassment, that the pickleball players are going to make way for a family from Demuth to come in and use that court. I just think that's fiction. That's not going to happen. When we started this whole process, there was never an intention to remove tennis as an option from Demuth Park. That's effectively what we are doing. Our city is in the midst of much change because of the lack of representation of diverse communities in the city government process. There's very few people from this community at Demuth here today. But yet we may make a recommendation to the City Council to remove this sport effectively from that community. I think that's really sad. I mean, I'm frustrated because I think back to a discussion this body had about Head Start, where we would be helping some of the most needy children amongst us, and that wasn't supported. Eventually there was a compromise and an alternative, but I think we as a body have to think about these actions we're taking and look around, and are we really representing the city of Palm Springs. So I just feel whenever we go down this road of taking one resource away from somebody else and giving it to another, that's not the right way to go. The motion that the subcommittee, with all due respect, I think is doing that. I think we should be supporting more, not taking away from one community to the next.
Thank you, Commissioner Armstrong. Yes, Commissioner Lamort.
Well, I think the first thing is community and fellowship is a hallmark of Palm Springs. And I understand that Ruth Hardy Park is your community that you come to every day or during season. I think it's very important that we maintain that history. I also believe, however, that we have to open most of all of our facilities so that anyone that wants to use them can. I'm a bit reluctant to say that there should be no pickleball in Ruth Hardy Park. My suggestion was to put the new pickleball courts in Ruth Hardy. But I think if they're going to go into Sunrise, which is much bigger, that kind of deals with the situation. The second thing, I kind of agree with Commissioner Armstrong that one of those courts at Demuth should be permanently dedicated for tennis. There are people in the Demuth neighborhood who wish to use it, and I kind of agree with them, not casting anything on either group. It's almost like no difference than the tennis people being upset with the pickleball in theirs than the pickleball people being upset when somebody wants to take one of their courts away. So I think it's important that each venue can be used in each park. And I also think because we talked about Demuth Park is maybe an underrepresented area, that many of those people, as was stated, they don't get in their car and go to Ruth Hardy or go up to JOJ. They stay in their neighborhood. So I think it's important that we maintain one tennis court in Demuth Park.
One comment I'd like to make is, remember, if you've all visited Demuth Park, the first court is a one-for-one conversion. It is painted with pickleball capability for a single court or tennis. So it's sort of structured that it maps to what the subcommittee has recommended, because I don't believe in what I heard that you were asking that was converted to a four-court change. So it would be one-for-one, so that would still be playable. I would tell you that I am not for asking people who live in the Demuth Park area to go to Ruth Hardy Park to play tennis, because they're not going to be of the caliber of players at Ruth Hardy Park, and they will have a long, long wait to be able to get onto the courts. If they want to play in their neighborhood, I really feel strongly that we need to do that. I would like to see us add an additional court or two there, but it would not compete, in my mind, with the opportunity to put all the courts that we could at Sunrise Park. It would accomplish a couple of things for us, close to the Boys and Girls Club, use the facility. I do worry that we're going to get back to a dry condition in the not too distant future, and we're going to be looking at the fact that we have grass there, and how do we deal with keeping it alive by watering it. So I do like, I'm supportive of keeping a tennis court at Ruth Hardy, I'm sorry, at Demuth, to keep it flexible. I hate to deny anybody the opportunity to play, but the tennis courts, right now, they're getting close to being filled daily. I'm there at 8 o'clock in the morning walking my dogs through the park, and I see those courts being occupied pretty heavily Monday through Friday. So it's going to just get more and more. Season hasn't really quite kicked in yet. I would just like to see us try to keep everybody happy, but give a directive to city council that we're requesting how we can achieve that.
If I just may add, you're absolutely right. Nowhere in the motion does it say removing tennis from Demuth. So, and who knows what tennis will look like in season at Demuth, but the far east court is a tennis court. And pickleball would be able to use it in the interim. I didn't say in the motion, but I'm willing to add, and I think I should, is once Sunrise Park is completed, that Demuth return back to the community and maybe be 2 pickleball and 2 tennis courts, so that the community has those options. I suspect that should Sunrise be built, that it would be a fantastic pickleball facility. And I think people would be very, very happy there. I think our whole community would love to drive up and down Sunrise and see a lot of people using Sunrise Park. Like, that would be pretty great. So nowhere was it intended or said. As a matter of fact, in my comments, I think I also defended the Demuth Park community, that they should not lose their resources.
If I can interrupt for 1 second, and Jody, ask you if that change to the motion meets your requirements. Can you keep your second on that motion?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. All right. With that change, we still want to maintain the discussion opportunity. David?
Thanks. I'd just like to say that for Demuth Park, I think that there are 4, let's talk about having 4 courts there, 2 which have already been converted exclusively to pickleball courts. There's the 3rd court, which is exclusively now striped as a tennis court, and the 4th court, which is a blended court. And I think, if I just want to make sure I understand the motion, the motion, I believe, is saying that the 3rd court be striped exclusively for pickleball, and the 4th court, if my understanding is correct, well, my recommendation would be not to blend it, not to keep it, because that actually doesn't do anybody any good, is to turn it totally into a tennis court so that it can be used for tennis. And then when it's not being used, or when there's a tournament, for instance, for pickleball, and they need it for a few hours to have as many courts as possible, they could temporarily tape it out and turn it into 4 courts. So as far as best utilization, I think it would be the 3rd court becomes all pickleball, and the 4th court remains a tennis court to allow for tennis to be played there, and then it can be taped out like they're doing at Ruth Hardy Park now to maximize courts. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's actually the intention.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify that. And then the last thing is, the only piece of the motion that I'm still having a little bit of trouble with is talking about, and it's much like Commissioner Lamort was talking about, setting a precedent where we are recommending on a court that something is done exclusively, so that, as a for instance, if, I don't know how that would get translated and what that would mean and what motion or ordinance the council would enact. But then it gets into the details, which is, okay, does that mean that next summer, if nobody's using a court, nobody really wants to use a court, but pickleball players want to go to Ruth Hardy Park and use the court, that somebody can call the police on them? And does that make any sense? I mean, what are we doing here? So I just want to be careful when we're saying, I think if we build enough facilities and do our best, the communities will begin to take care of themselves.
My fear is that that will not happen as quickly as some people would like. And a concern that I have, and I've used in my own thought process, is, so somebody that lives across the street from Victoria Park says, I want to swim. You can't go across the street and pull your own pool up and swim at Victoria Park. You go to the swim facility. So you do things at the facilities where we, accommodate your needs. So I sometimes feel, that we're putting undue pressure on ourselves to try and make Ruth Hardy Park a flexible place. And I think about that signage that was placed there many years ago, and I don't quite, I'm not a tennis player and I'm not a pickleball player. I committed that I would not do that as long as I was on this commission, but I will be there after I leave this commission. But Vicki, could you help me to understand that terminology around appropriate sport being played on the court?
Well, the only signage is the new signage that was posted at Ruth Hardy Park, and I believe, because I wasn't involved in that, that was handled through the Department of Facilities and Maintenance, and they had those signage made. I don't know where they came up with the language that went on those signs, because I don't believe that was what was posted previously. So when the new signs went up, it did go up stating that these courts were for use for tennis and tennis-related activities. And if you remember in previous meetings, Ambassador Mangione had made a comment that the USTA has acknowledged pickleball as a tennis-related activity. And so that's kind of where we're at today, and I think that was the reasoning behind going to those courts and using them.
Other comments? Commissioner Goodman?
Someone mentioned earlier in a comment about we are probably the highest taxed city that we know of in Southern California, and attention should be given to Parks and Recs and our facilities. And I think if the city wants to build additional pickleball courts and create a pickleball center in Sunrise Park, it can be done within a year. I think if it takes longer than a year, it's the city is dragging their feet. And I think that that would solve a summertime and a seasonal solution.
So we've had a great deal of conversation. Commissioner Armstrong?
Just some information. I believe that signage is up there because the Duluth and neighborhood residents were wanting to use those hard courts that were lighted for soccer. So there was some intentionality there on the city's part. Now those courts are not being used by the neighborhood. Some people in the neighborhood want to use them for soccer. I think ultimately the city council is going to have to make this decision, and I appreciate all the work that you guys have done. I'm still quite unclear about this court and whether it's really effectively going to, deny the community of Duluth access to that, given the harassing behavior we've heard from both communities. But ultimately, it's going to be the city council. I think the mayor is here. We have Measure J, and the city is spending money on parks, but a lot of that money is going to the downtown park. So there certainly should be some parks to spend it on our neighborhood parks. So I'm going to support this motion to move it ahead, because I want it to be hopefully unanimous, to send a message to the council that we have to use our money for our community parks as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Armstrong. With no,
Well,
Commissioner
I
Cohen?
don't know if this is the right protocol, so I think it is. I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion. Is that the way it's done?
Yes.
That I support everything that Commissioner Goodman has put into her motion. I would like to take out from that motion, amend it so it does not say that there is exclusive use at either Demuth Park or exclusive use at Ruth Hardy Park for those pieces.
He can. There has to be a second, and if there is no second, then it stays with your motion. And obviously, if there is a second as we go to vote, it may or may not pass, and we may have to restructure. Is there a second for that motion?
Sure. The motion is I would like to have everything that Commissioner Goodman outlined for her motion, except I would like to strike the part that says there is exclusive use either at Demuth Park or exclusive use either at Ruth Hardy Park for a particular sport.
I'll second that.
Please, this is a commission meeting.
In my motion, it says
Hold on.
Duluth Hardy Park would be dedicated to tennis. It doesn't say anything about Duluth being restricted. It doesn't.
Well, we have the motion, we have the second, we have an opportunity for conversation. The one thing I would say is we all have to remember, these are not our rules. We are making a recommendation, and we can make the recommendation one way or another. The council is very, very informed on what's going on. They read the papers. This stuff is going into the papers. They're listening to our meetings. So I would just remind you that that small change, in my mind, one way or another, is not what's going to happen as a result of this meeting. We are making a motion and a recommendation. Some of those things council will listen to and may very much push forward, and some they may not feel they can or will. So I guess at this point, what we would need to do is vote on the amended motion. And if the motion passes, that's how it moves forward. If the motion does not pass, there would be the opportunity to make another motion. That motion would fail. So with that being said, I would entertain a vote at this point for the motion as amended by Commissioner Cohn and seconded by Commissioner Lamort. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that's 2 up and 5 down. If we can...
Okay, let's go back. I'll make another motion.
Are you going to make the same motion?
I'm making the same motion, but let's go on record. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend to the City of Palm Springs that they build 16 courts at Sunrise Park, 16 pickleball courts at Sunrise Park in the area between the library and the Boys and Girls Club. Second part of this motion would be convert the 2 remaining tennis courts at Demuth Park, as David has said, where one of those courts is restriped to host 4 pickleball courts, and that the Far East court remain a tennis court so that it can be used as a conversion court by the pickleball community, and a stipulation that should a family in the neighborhood come to play tennis, that we would like them to have priority to play tennis on that Far East court. We want the facilities at both parks to have workable lights. We want them to be safe, to have wind guards. We want bleachers to be safe and maintained, and any debris that is around the outside perimeter of those courts to be maintained and clean, as well as the restrooms updated and maintained.
Do we have a second for that motion?
And then the other part was that Ruth Hardy Park would be dedicated to tennis.
And do we have a second for that motion? Carolina? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you, everybody.
Before you leave, I would like to thank you all very much for coming today. Understand that this is your government in action, and by being here and speaking to us, you both represented your passions very, very, very clearly to us. And I would tell you that these commissioners are as interested in making everybody happy as possible. So thank you for your time.
And before everyone leaves, if I may say, I have already introduced the conversation around the high school courts for pickleball. I will continue to work with the district on those courts, and I will report back at our next meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If I could ask representatives from who are going to talk to us about hiking trails to come forward and have a seat. Yep, I believe. Rich Jervin, Scott Conley, and Doug Evans. Did we lose him?
No, you know what?
Oh, they're there. There you go. Have a seat, please.
Because I do know that I've been over.
They're trying to fight their way in.
I see what they're saying. I still don't believe that we should tell people that they can play in one court and not another court. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
I do.
But on the other hand, you've got 2 different sports. You really don't.
Thank you very much for joining us. And if you would please introduce yourselves, and the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes. Oh, good. All 3 of you are here. Great.
My name's Rich Jarvinen. I'm actually from Indio, but I'm here with a couple of Palm Springs guys. Maybe you know Doug Evans, and on my left is Scott Conley. We're all from the Desert Trails Coalition. It's the only 501c3 trail advocacy group in the Coachella Valley. So if there are trail issues, and trail users want to get involved in those issues, we're the group that handles it. We're 3 of 13 members on the board, and that's all the Des Trails Coalition is. It's a board. But we represent 6 organizations that are hikers, mountain bikers, equestrians, and trail runners. We've been in place about 20 years, and we have pretty much been involved. Maybe you've heard about the CVMSHCP, Coachella Valley Multiple Species Habitat Conservation Plan. That just rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it? So that was something that was implemented in the valley that basically guides development as well as trail activities. And the reason is we have 27 species that are either listed as endangered or of interest in the Coachella Valley. So trails may have, and they have been considered to have, an impact on especially one of those species here, which is the peninsular bighorn sheep. So we're the organization that works with the CVAG, and underneath CVAG is the
Conservation Commission.
Yeah, Coachella Valley Conservation Commission, and there's a group that reports to them called the Trails Management Subcommittee. The 3 of us, plus about 3 or 4 others from the Des Trails Coalition, are participants in that, and that's where the Trails Plan is actually developed. In other words, what trails can be put into place, what trails have to be removed, so decisions like that, so that we're protecting the species for recovery. We have about 500 miles of trails in the Coachella Valley. And we work, because we have 2,000 plus members associated with our organizations, we work with other groups like Friends of the Desert Mountains, if you've heard of them. They actually do a huge chunk of the management, actually the maintenance and the repair, and in some cases actually building new trails here in the Coachella Valley. So we have the feedstock, we have the volunteers. And because of that, we're very heavily involved in the trails themselves and maintaining trails and so forth. And that's important because 2 things that I wanted to bring up to you today is that the Trails Management Subcommittee made a recommendation to ask CVCC and CVAG for $100,000 a year of trail funds going to the Friends of the Desert Mountains to pay for trail repair, trail maintenance, and the building of new trails. You may be hearing about that. I'm not sure if or when that will come up, but that's something that's on the agenda. The second thing is the bighorn sheep are getting close to being downlisted or delisted. And that's pretty significant because that has a huge impact on how we can use the trails. The reason I say that is because we're at populations now over the last 4 years and maybe longer where we have enough sheep where we can start talking about it. They have to have that population, those populations for 6 years consistently, so we've got 2 more years to go. We are working Desert Trails Coalition with the Trails Management Subcommittee on a biological study looking at human impact on the bighorn sheep. So we're the trail users kind of overseeing it as far as trail users are concerned, keeping in mind what we want as trail users to have happen. When that occurs, we're going to be looking for a filing in about 2020, 2021 to downlist or delist the sheep. And that's something that Des Trails Coalition has on its agenda, so you may be hearing more about that. And I wanted to bring that to you today just to give you a little bit of advance notice of what that's about. But the real reason we're here today is, although we've done a lot of things around the Coachella Valley, we really want to look to you to say, what can we do to serve you?
Interesting. Well, I had actually met one of you at a city council meeting, and that was probably 6 or 7 months ago, maybe a little bit longer. And I put the card away until we changed some of the commissioners, and we actually have people who have interest in the hiking and are experienced hikers. And I thought it would be better if we had a commission that was more savvy to what you're talking about, because when you talk about delisting sheep, I'm thinking, were they ever A-listed? Or
So no, they're higher than the B list anyways.
There you go. But I actually would ask the commissioners to to comment and think about this. I mean, I know that this is new information coming forward, and we all haven't had a time to think about it. But I thought I would like to, kick this off by having you come and talk to us and get some feedback. I've always personally had one major question, and is my understanding is there are tribal trails, there are county trails, and there's a little bit of trail that actually, and it may be a section of those trails, that is Palm Springs controlled, if you will, or the city of Palm Springs. And I would personally love to see a map that says what's what, to make sure that we don't have people who do have input from the city's perspective making changes on tribal land or county land that has no ownership. So,
yeah, my name's Doug Evans. I live in Cathedral City, but I've been active in things in Palm Springs for almost as long as Vicki, or about the same time. I've been active with what really started the whole idea of trails in the city of Palm Springs, and it was a foundation that no longer exists, Parks, Trails, and Open Space Foundation. The trail network in Palm Springs is complicated, as well as in the rest of the Coachella Valley. You've got trails that start on city-owned land, go on to private land, go on to tribal land, go on to BLM land. So you could really get confused if you try to put all those pieces together. It's one of the things that we do in our Trails Management Subcommittee, is take a look at how the trails are affected by different properties. I think where one of the key things that most people don't have a good handle on is trail maintenance and development. Historically, trails in Palm Springs were either built by the city, the South Licking Trail or the North Licking Trail. The majority of the other trails were built by Desert Riders over the years. We have a nonprofit foundation called the Trails Fund, and we've been building, maintaining trails since 1930. We don't plan on going away. We've been here. We've been good neighbors. We work very closely with the Tribal Council on their properties. They have a great trail maintenance crew. Ralph Cato and his crew is one of the finest you'll ever run into. So if you take a look at trail maintenance, and one of the reasons why Rich mentioned that we're going to start talking to people about funding of trails is if you looked at trail usage, just in the past 10 years, it's gone up exponentially. The good news from a wildlife standpoint, at the same time trail use has gone up, the bighorn sheep population has gone up and stabilized. And that's
more
why
people means more sheep, right?
Yeah, and no, the sheep population is going up. It looks pretty darn good. And why that's so important, when the multi-species plan started, the government agencies, state and federal government, used the multi-species plan to come up with a trails program that was going to eliminate, restrict, and severely manage trails to the point where the trail community developed the Desert Trails Coalition. We realized that Desert Riders and individuals, Chuck Nesbitt, local Palm Springs resident that's on the Trails Management Subcommittee, we all realized that if we didn't have an organization, we would not be effective in discussing things with the federal government. So we look at things very carefully, very technically, and most people just think the trails exist. The city has participated financially on trail maintenance over the years. They have contributed money to Desert Riders. We've done the trail maintenance for the city, and we've had as many as 2 or more professional trail builders in our employment for over 40 years. that most people, unless you see them on the trail, don't know. And the sad part is, one's passed away and one is retired. And that's why we're back to volunteers and going forward with 500 miles of trails. And if you talk to tourism, they'll tell you that if it's not number one, it's close to it. The number one activity in the Coachella Valley for tourists is trails. And most people don't understand that.
The group before you would tell you it was tennis, but we believe it's
And we could put a golf hat on and say that it's golf.
Well, unless one other thing is there is an official map for the National Monument that has all the trails listed on it. And so all the Palm Springs trails that are technically open are on this map, and I'll leave this here.
Perfect.
We have extras over at the Visitor Center at the National Monument, and Friends of the Desert and BLM are the ones that actually put this together and have it for you.
Is this on the website, updated on the website? Well, not only the map, but the trails on
It is, you have to dig for it. But you know what, that's a real good point. We actually have a website, it's deadtrailscoalition.org. I think it's on the agenda there. And we will make sure that it is on there. I'm pretty sure it is, but we'll make sure that
It's not.
it's not.
What is it again?
deserttrailscoalition.org. Info, excuse me. Yeah, no, that is it, right?
I think so. Desert Trails.
Coalition.org, yeah.
What I would
Okay.
like to.
Oh, I just want to ask, so what is it that we are supposed to be doing? Out of my ignorance, what is Parks
Yeah.
and Recs, what
No,
are we
that's
supposed to
an
be?
excellent question. And in fact, the way we work with Palm Desert, La Quinta, and Indio right now is they have one person fairly high up. Les Johnson he's director of development services in Indio. Ryan Stendell in Palm Desert. I don't remember who it is in La Quinta, but we work with them directly. So one person out of the city that we go to, or they come to us and they say, hey, we have these plans for trails that we would like some help on, we'll get involved in that.
So city council or Parks and Recs Commission of City Council?
However the city wants to do it.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of that gray area that Doug Evans had mentioned, because we used to have Parks Open Space, and it was kind of somewhere between planning and Parks and Rec, depending on who was getting the inquiries and who could answer the question best. And obviously, that kind of foundation has gone away, so it's kind of maintaining, for the city side, it comes out of, Tracy's department, the trailheads, signs, the trash cleanup, that's part of the facilities and maintenance department. But the maintenance is, Doug said that Desert Riders have been maintaining the city trails for years, and the city to provide them with a certain amount of funding every year to do that. So it kind of comes, I get questions sometimes, and if I can't answer it, I would always go to planning and say, hey, can you help me with this? So.
Yeah, to be upfront with you, I understand the city organization pretty good. I don't know who to call on any one subject. At one point, there were 6 or 7 people I would call, and I just start working through the phone line until somebody had a catcher's mitt, to use a recreation term, and said, I'll toss the ball around. And one of the challenges the Trails Management Subcommittee has is there's a lot of pretty aggressive trail planning going on in the valley right now that affect trails. And there's probably nobody from the city of Palm Springs, with the exception of the city representative on the Conservation Commission, which is an elected official.
Who's that?
Probably Lisa Middleton?
Yeah, Councilmember Middleton. And at the Conservation Commission, that's at an extremely high level, that they're only going to hear things that are on their agenda or problems. Typically how city councils work, and what's going on trails, for Palm Springs, because you have one of the most extensive trail systems, and you have some pretty good people in town that are building trails on their own that aren't permitted, that are problematic. We call them volunteer trails or community trails.
Neighborhood trails or social trails.
And they compound the problems of how do you deal with wildlife issues? You know, the key trails listed on this diagram have already been permitted, you know, and they're being managed reasonably well and being studied. But, geez, Rich, did you guys ever count up how many community trails there are?
Well, we did go through a process, and there's hundreds of miles of community trails throughout the Coachella Valley.
That get no maintenance, that may or may not be in good locations, and they may or may not be safe. You know, and that's one of the things that we have always looked for, and the Friends and the volunteers, is create trail safety so that the trails don't become the problem. Unfortunately, it's usually the trail user that becomes the problem because they're not using the trails correctly.
So what I would like to do with this, because I can see that we're not going to be able to boil the ocean here in this meeting, I would like to ask if I could get a volunteer subcommittee to work with you, also to, you know, travel the city offices and see who should be on point for some of these things. And I know that we have Commissioner Cohn who is interested. Is there anybody else that is interested in Commissioner Lamort, Commissioner Delatorre? I think
another battle for us.
we will call this a subcommittee, and a subcommittee is, we'll need to talk about that because you're going to need to post any meetings that you have. Different than an ad hoc committee in that an ad hoc committee generally has short-term life and doesn't require the posting of meetings, but I would ask that you develop a lead and then discuss with Vicky, or, well, I'm thinking Vicky's out of here shortly. Whoever's filling in for Vicky in the interim to get meetings posted so that we make sure that we're following the Brown Act. I thank you very much for coming and talking. I apologize that it took us this long, but I think we have the right group together to be able to work with you going forward. And I also thank you very much for allowing the other group to work through the issues.
We really appreciate being invited to meet with you. Thank you.
Would it be possible to get your contact information, which is not on here, maybe phone or email, and that would be a way of being able to be in touch with you?
Perfect.
So what I have is our Desert Trails Coalition cards. It's info@deserttrailscoalition.org, and you can contact me directly there, and I'll kick you the rest of the stuff.
Great, thank you.
Okay. In fact, you want to just
I'll give you my stock answer. Desert Riders doesn't have any business cards for their board members because we still ride horses.
It's just a way of being able to get in touch with you gentlemen.
And I'll leave a little brochure if anybody would like to know a little bit more about Desert Riders. It's a fun, quick read, and it's really the history of Palm Springs in a snapshot, because it was a horse town at one point.
Sure was.
There were 17 stables in town.
Sally Sanji said she used to ride her horse up Ramon Road. There was no Ramon Road.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Vicky, if I don't see you.
The last item that we have on the agenda, and I'm going to try to move it pretty quickly, is the discussion or recommendation for a new time for our meeting.
Please, God. If you want me to continue, it has to be after school hours, has to be.
And what are school hours?
The bell rings at 3:30, and I'm in Desert Hot Springs, so,
3:40.
no.
I've seen the way you drive.
5 o'clock? You've seen me drive, yeah. Is that on the record?
Were you able to come up with a night that?
Well, I thought I sent you guys the staff report. I thought, maybe not.
Oh, no, I think she did.
But after talking with Jerry Finnerman, who's in our broadcast station, and our last meeting, she brought me a little sticky note. The first Tuesday and Thursdays of each month are available, and then the fourth Monday of each month. Those are the 3 best dates that.
Fourth Monday and
first and Tuesday and Thursday.
First Tuesday or Thursday. I
Those are
vote for Monday.
Those are the days that, have the least.
Can everybody kind of check themselves for 4 p.m. on Monday?
Oh.
Can we do 4:30?
4:30?
4:30?
So then it would be what, 4:30 to 6?
Mm-hmm.
Monday would be better for me. I have school board meetings on Tuesday evenings.
Commissioner Armstrong, I know you're involved in school. It would be the fourth Monday? That's good? Johnny?
Yeah, I think that's good.
This is way too simple.
Oh, you just jinxed us. Let's see what's gonna
No,
happen.
he was doing it. He was. Yes,
Oh.
we are good.
Fourth Monday?
Fourth Monday. So, can we get a motion? Now, do we need to have any external approval? I mean, we're meeting.
What will have to happen if you decide to move the meeting, we'll need to do, there's a form we have to do stating that we're changing our meeting date and time, and it needs to be, signed by the city clerk's office, I think. I've got a copy from when we changed it the last time, when we used to meet earlier, and then we met a different date, and then we moved from the Leisure Center to City Hall for being taped, so.
So, do we need a motion to do that, to move it forward? Let's do it to be, yeah, I
You
don't
do-
want
just
to
to be-
come back.
That way you made that motion, and then you can determine, is it, do you want to start with the December meeting, or you want to start at the beginning of the year?
January.
I make a motion that we start as of January 2019 to hold our Parks and Recs Commission meetings on the fourth Monday of the month from 4:30 to about 6 PM.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So if we can submit whatever paperwork that is, that'd be perfect. Real quickly, we'll do a round robin, but I would like you all to stay. We have a little bit of a celebration today honoring Vicky's last meeting with us.
We'll go around. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yep.
So I don't want to steal the spotlight from Vicky, so thank you, Vicky. I just wanted to, I know we're trying to end the meeting quickly as well, so I just wanted to go on record as saying that Commissioner Del Torre and I went to the Pride Parade to represent the Parks and Rec Commission, and unfortunately, it was the two of us, and we had no sign, we had no identification, and people were looking at us like we were crazy, like, why are these two people just walking around? So
I
we
saw what else was going on there. I don't think they were looking at you like
Well, you're
you were.
probably right. So my point of that is that we stayed for a couple of blocks, and then we thought it was a little bit too weird, so we kind of bowed out.
We watched the rest
But
of
I would like to suggest that for next year, that we do have a presence there, and it would be even better if we could get the passionate communities that we see, like tennis people and pickleball people and soccer kids and baseball kids, and invite them to join
be a part
and show,
and
because I
walk
think
with
that will
us.
show to the council how important our parks and what we're doing is. And it shouldn't be the commissioners, it should be the people who feel this is important as well.
And then if I can jump in, it doesn't have to necessarily start next year, but just anytime we're participating in any sort of parade, it would be really nice to get the community involved as well, because they're the ones that are making, the difference too. They're coming in and they're, all the people that were here, I'm sure they'd like to be part of the, parades and walking and everything. Yeah. To show that they're part of the community,
I think that's a great idea. And I would tell you, last year, we participated in the Black History, and we had 2 vehicles, and we had signage and stuff. Unfortunately, this year, it happened really quickly. And the other thing that I found, I was with the police department, and with Gay Pride, everybody is involved in either a church or a group. So it really starts to defray being able to be together. So we may want to rethink Pride unless we're able to pull people together from the community, because I think that's a wonderful idea. It will represent the face of park users. So that's great.
So I'm not going to be able to stay for cake, but I want to, Vicki, I think this is my 3rd year on the commission. I have had such a great time, and I appreciate your leadership and your friendship and the intel that you come with. It's really fantastic. Tough act to follow, so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I want to thank my buddies, my partners, commissioner buddies, and colleagues on the subcommittee for pickleball, and thank you for all the commissioners for your comments, your thoughtfulness. I think we definitely have a journey ahead of us, but this is by far steps and leaps and bounds from where we were, so thank you very much. Good meeting today.
So I've known Vicki since I moved here in 1992, so maybe the summer of 1993. I taught 1 year, and I applied to be a summer camp counselor over there at Camp Palm Springs. And I was her teacher sitting over there nodding her head. I sure was. There's Janice.
J-Lo.
But I started there, and then I raised my kids. My kids went through the program. Our kids have played sports together and things. So I've known Vicki for a really long time, and you deserve a really long vacation with nothing to do but put your feet up and relax. You're amazing, and you've done a fabulous job. And thank you so much for everything you've done for the city and for my family.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Just want to thank the pickleball committee, subcommittee, and working on the tennis thing too. It's a nice little road, but I think we got some good headway, so that's great. To you, Vicki, I've known you for over 30 years. I only wish the best for you. We go back a long ways. We share a lot of friends together. You've always been fair to me. I really appreciate it. And like I said, I wish you the best. And thank you for the good meeting.
Thank you.
Well, I've known you for 3 months. But I've enjoyed every day of it. Congratulations. I said it before, but you'll see. You're going to love that they're going to pay you to stay home. There's a wonderful thing about getting a pension. A lot of people don't get it. We're the lucky ones. One other thing, I don't know if this is the right place to do it.
Bring it up
I
and we'll
walk
tell
my
you.
dogs on the CV Link, which is right along the golf course. And I think it's the 10th tee is within 10 feet of the road. And those people who hook instead of slice are banging balls onto the CV Link roadway. And so I think the city should be aware of that to try to eliminate a lawsuit. Because I almost got beamed by one 2 days ago. So I don't know how to.
And that's our golf course?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tockwitz Creek.
Tockwitz, it runs,
Yeah, Tockwitz
they're
Creek.
putting in a CV link behind where Field 7 and 8 are. It used to be an old bike, the bike trail originally was there. They moved it, took it away when the batting cages were in, and it actually ran down along that little frontage road and went up the ramp at the far end to get back onto the golf course.
So the solution would be some sort of a
Fencing,
screening.
netting.
Well, it could be netting, or maybe just
Well,
change the
actually-
whole configuration. So instead of driving parallel to CV Link, maybe just have it move over a little bit.
So thinking about, you've brought an item up, we really shouldn't be discussing it. What you should do is ask that it be added to the agenda to be
Discussed.
discussed
Okay.
and solved. So then
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Del Torre.
And I've also known you, Vicki, for only 3 months. But it's been really nice. Every time I come in here, you're very knowledgeable of the material. So I really appreciate that and making me understand better. I know it's been a little bit tough for me to talk still, but it's getting easier for me to understand what the process is and everything. And today was a really good meeting, so I really appreciate that. And then also, I kind of wanted to add something for next month's agenda, which is Paul's, the smoking, the signs. Because I do notice, they're a lot better to see if they're in color and really easy.
I like that there was a fine on the bottom.
Yeah, and then it'll be a little bit more intimidating for people
So let's
to.
just add it on. I think
Yes.
that's great.
So I think it'll be a good idea to talk about it at the next meeting.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Just one thing. So I was looking at my emails to see the first email I had from Vicki, and it was in 2010, and it was, it's interesting, I'm laughing about it, 'cause it's about the dog park and hounding you to this and this, and she's, the trail is interesting. She's like, oh, I sorry I didn't get to you last night, because she was still checking her emails. So I'm off to see the assistant city manager about this, and it's just, you were just, it's been great to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. 38 years. I think you deserve twice as many years in retirement and enjoyment. So it's been a pleasure to work with you and to get to know your family. And it's been great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. That being said,
I'm
sorry.
I have an update, just to keep you apprised for anyone. PSUSD's state preschool program actually started the first part of November, utilizing the room. I don't know the exact numbers now, but within the last week, they had about 8 children in the morning program and only 2 or 3 in the afternoon program. Now, I know they're working on finding their numbers, but right now, that's the status of where we're at. They're there Monday through Friday. I think the morning program is like 8:45 to 11:45, and then from 12 to 2:45. So they finally got everything up and running. The last obstacle after the fire inspection was licensing came in for like 4 or 5 hours. And that was the, nitpick part of finalizing the use of the room for the program. So they did orientation on the 1st of November, and
What room are they using?
they're in the tiny tot room that we had
Down in the corner.
where we had the tiny tot program at, yeah.
And where are all those kids?
Well, of ours, a lot of them graduated and are now in kindergarten.
Good answer.
So those who wish to remain as part of the program, are they part of this 8 and 2?
No, they are not.
And have they been approached? Or
They
have
were
just-
given paperwork and have decided not to go that route. The school district.
Sorry to hear that. Anything else?
Well,
Any final words?
it's been a rewarding career to be here with the city of Palm Springs over the last 38 years. I grew up a lot. And, when we got Jonathan and he came to live with us, I had promised him that I'll retire when you hit middle school. But I wasn't ready. I still had things to do and things I wanted to accomplish. And so I promised him when he hit high school I would retire. And
You don't want to make it an even 40?
well, I've had people ask me that, but they keep telling me that I'm now working for free. So, time to, move on. And hopefully, I know they have interviews scheduled next week. We had about 50 applicants for the position. I don't know how many they're interviewing, but hopefully I'm sure we'll find a good candidate that the city manager will select and to move the department forward. So. Thank you guys for everything and all your support. And
In fairness to disclose, I will be part of the interview process next Monday, at least the initial interviews. So with that being said, in honor of your retirement, Vicki, we close today's meeting, and thank you very much. Our next meeting is December 17th.